Welcome to the Waves Business Coaching Podcast, where we help leaders build their dream teams so that them and their business can thrive. This week, I interview Andrew from Story Builders. Andrew is an author and a coach, and he really helps business leaders with good ideas and good intellectual property, turn that into an ecosystem. So whether that be a book, a course, that he helps turn their knowledge into tangible things that people can sell. And so we have a great conversation about, one, how to connect with your audience using story, and how to build an ecosystem around your ideas. If you're an expert in a field, this is a great episode for you to listen to help figure out how can you turn your knowledge into a business and into a market ecosystem that helps and serves other people. Let's dive into my conversation with Andrew. Andrew, thank you so much for being on the Waves Business Coaching Podcast. Man, I'd love for you to start and just share a little bit about you and your story.
Absolutely, my man. So a lot of directions I could go, but I'll keep it more, I guess, professionally focused. But I'll start with a personal story. So my daughter, when she was born, normal kid. By the time she got to about a year old, though, my wife, who's somehow understood kids better than I did with our first kid, was like, I feel like she should be talking by now. I feel like she should be able to communicate better. And by about a year and a quarter, she was like, man, and ladies will say 15 months, by the way, and they do that all the way up until 23 months old. And then it goes to years. But for me, I always go right to years. Right. So anyway, so she was 15 months old, and we got her evaluated, and over the course of the next year, we came to find out she had a condition called speech apraxia. And what that does is it makes it more difficult to formulate words, makes it more difficult to speak and to talk and communicate, which was a huge challenge. Especially by the time she was about 2 and 3 years old, she only had a couple sounds that she could make. And so we had to try and communicate through sign language and through other means. And it just got really, really challenging through there. And really one of the biggest things that I learned there is your ability to speak, but really your ability to communicate is so critical. We're very blessed. She's gotten a ton of extra resources and help, and she's speaking totally normally now, which is beautiful. But through that transition, I really got honed in on communication and how critical it is to be able to share your message and to be able to share your story. Because for her, she wasn't really able to communicate her story very well, her lived experience very well. And it's very frustrating for her. And I see that a lot with other people. And whether they have a condition like speech apraxia or something else, oftentimes people struggle to communicate their message. They're struggling to tell their story or share their story in an effective way. And so for me, that's a huge passion to be able to step in and help people with that. So I work at a company called Story Builders. And what we do is we help with story. We help people to enhance their stories. We help people to build out better business frameworks, but then turn that into something bigger, turn that into your book, turn that into a course or a training or a workshop or a keynote speech, and communicate that message in a bigger way with more scaled impact. So we like to partner with business people, or really people that have a message they're looking to grow, and help them grow it. And there's a lot of cool ways that we do that, but that's kind of a little bit of the background on me and some of the work that we're doing.
How many kids do you have?
3 kids now. Now my oldest is 6 years old. She's in first grade.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've got one who's 2, so not quite in the multi-kids yet. We'll get there.
It's a trip, man.
Dude, I love that story. That's actually a story I hadn't heard before, and that's cool how it plays into what you do and like what you're passionate about. And I think everyone, what they do for work a lot of times comes out of stuff that's happened in life, and what they're passionate about comes from situations. And that's really cool how you've connected a personal thing to your job and have become passionate about it. I know that storytelling is something I'm very passionate about. Story Brand is a company I work with, and how that plays into business and the overlaps there, I love. But I want to dive into how story plays into this ecosystem, this idea of an IP ecosystem that you've mentioned before. So can you kind of explain what an IP ecosystem is and why it's crucial for businesses and entrepreneurs?
100%. And we'll maybe start with the problem first.
Yeah.
often people try to create a product or they'll create an offering and
Yep.
they try to build their business around it. I'm going to solve this problem. And it's all well and good. And usually it is, fee for service. You're doing something and you're
Yeah.
getting paid for it. And it's wonderful. At a certain point in time, though, you think to yourself, okay, I'm running out of time. I only have so much time to do this. So I can
Right.
either charge more for what I do, or I can see if there's ways that I can make money while I'm sleeping. And so, there's usually kind of those two ways that you're like, okay, well, how can I get my business to work a little bit more for me?
Right.
And it's usually in that spot that IP ecosystem starts to come into play. Because a lot of times people will just double down. They'll just, well, I'll just do more work, or I'll just hire more versions of me,
Yeah.
and I'll just keep doing more of that. And that's one way to build a business. And you can build a very successful business doing that. However, a lot of people want to grow their business beyond just themselves or just beyond the exact type of offering that they have. And for those that are kind of in that mindset or in that space, what's really critical is you start building the central ideas of your business. What is the core of it? And we can call this core intellectual property. You can call it whatever you want. But the general idea here, these are your specialized stories that you tell. These are your customized frameworks that you have come up with within your business that serve your customers. This is any original research or data. These are the testimonials that you gathered. This is all the stuff that's unique to you and makes you and your business special.
Yeah.
And more than just special, it's seen as valuable. You look at different brands that are out there. If you were to, completely destroy all their physical footprints, like Nike as an example, right? Their brand still has value just as a brand, just because it controls a lot of intellectual property. Now they have
Right.
a lot of shoe designs and other stuff that they own patents for, and that's one way to go about intellectual property. But for a lot of business owners, intellectual property can just be as simple as I have this 5-step framework that I take people through to get X result. And that's unique to me. I've come up with that. But if you can start branding that, if you can start naming that, and if you can start increasing the value of that proposition in your customers' eyes, you can now charge more for what you do. You can now maybe serve at a higher level. You can create a different product that does something similar, or maybe comes in a little bit earlier or a little bit later in your customer's journey. You can go from, just a service provider. Maybe you start going into speaking. Maybe you start going into different trainings, or creating online programs, or consulting, right? There's a million options that you can go once you have your core IP solidified. You can basically use that as a bank to dip into to keep creating more products. And so that's what we call the IP ecosystem. Is instead of just kind of flailing around and like randomly building something like, oh, I'm just going to build a course, I guess everyone else is building
Yeah.
courses, right? Is you can look at like, okay, what do my customers need?
Yep.
What's something that I can put in my business that's going to serve my business in different ways, right? Because now I can have this course. I have maybe my main service offering, and that service offering feeds into the course feeds into the service offering, and maybe I write a book, and now that book feeds into both of those, and both of those things feed into
Yeah.
the book, right? And now everything starts working together. And when you have that type of a system, everything accelerates each other. So instead of just doing these one-off things that are very linear, you start getting more into exponential type growth.
So, two, I'll say buzzword terms I've heard recently are, one's been around for a while, a sales funnel, right? And that's been around for a while with marketing. And then recently I've heard about a marketing flywheel. It's been a term I've seen used. With this IP ecosystem, do you feel like it's more of a flywheel or more of a funnel as far as like how to take intellectual property and start to spawn off new ideas that point to each other and stuff like that?
Oh man, absolutely a flywheel.
Okay.
And it's one of those things that you keep running through a process,
Yep.
right? Where you're like, "Oh, I've got my original IP. What's another way that I can sell it? How else can I monetize this?"
Yep.
And you're likely going to find that maybe your core offering might be too expensive for some of your customers. Where like they're like, "Oh man, I'd love to, but oh, I can't, we can't afford that."
Yep.
Okay, well, is there a way that you can still deliver something of value to them that's maybe a
Definitely.
different price point that is more up their alley? Or maybe that's the opposite. Maybe you've got a kind of mid-range price point, and maybe there's someone that's like, man, I need a premium offer. Like, I just want you to hold my hand. I want you to take me down and just do it for me, right?
Yeah.
Take me all the way to the promised land. And they're willing to pay for that, but you don't have the thing that they can buy yet. And so they're not buying it. And so you could build that based on your intellectual property, based on the core ideas that you have.
How, for people who might not fully grasp this idea of like their IP, their intellectual property is valuable, how can they start to think about their knowledge and experiences as something that could be an ecosystem?
Yeah. So, first thing I'd recommend is know that you are the expert. And ideally, you are an expert. If this is your first year doing something, going down the IP route might not be the way to go just yet.
Yeah.
You need a certain amount of reps. You need a certain amount of experience. And a good way to know is if you have controversial opinions about your field. If you can stake a claim on like, you know what, other people do it that way, but I like this way better, and there's a
Yeah.
reason I like this way better. And if you've gotten to that spot in your career or in your expertise, you're likely in a place where you can create more unique intellectual property. Because really, that's all it is. It's you planting a flag and making a stand and saying, hey, this is a little bit different than the norm, but it works amazing. And here's why. So I'll walk you through maybe a quick couple steps that people can consider. Is if you have a offering, think of it as a transformational offering. I'm taking people from point A and we're
Yep.
going to point B, and they're going to be very different by the time they get to point B. You can charge more for a transformational offering than you can for an incremental offering, right? I'm going to take you from point A and we're going to go to point A and a half, right? And it's like, okay, I'll give you a couple bucks for that, right? But maybe I won't, spend up really huge for that.
Right.
And so think of, okay, how can I transform this? And the same offering, by the way, can be positioned as incremental or it can be positioned as transformational. It's really all just in how you market it and how you show that value. So the key is, how can you now show that value that it's transformational? Okay, so one, try to come up with how it is transformational, and
Yeah.
ideally you can talk to your customers, like what journeys have they gone on, how has it changed their businesses or whatever they do. But then what you can do is say, okay, what is my step-by-step process for getting from that point A to that point B? And you may have multiple transformations that happen as you work with an ideal client or an ideal customer. But what you might want to hone in on is one maybe closer to the beginning, or the one that they're most interested in, the one that tends to sell. So I used to work as a personal trainer, and I can tell you, weightlifting and vegetables doesn't sell. That's not, we couldn't grow a business saying, hey, come over here, we'll lift some weights together. I'll tell you that vegetables are important and you're going to have a great time. Okay.
Yeah.
If that was what we sold, nobody would have bought, because that sounds hard and that sounds not fun, right? And
Right.
it doesn't sound
Right.
very tasty. And so for what we did though was we would sell a dream. Is we sell weight loss, we sell personal transformation. You are going to be a different person because you are coming to our studio, because you're working with us.
Yeah.
And we charged a premium. If you're paying like $10 a month for a gym, like we're like 400% more than that. You know what I mean? Like it was not
Right.
cheap.
Right.
So as far as a monthly fee, you had to invest, and two things happen. Those that pay attention. So they were
Yep.
financially invested and they were excited about working with us. But two, they saw that we promised a transformation instead of just some product. We promised that they were going to lose weight and that their life was going to be different. And that was huge. And so then we would walk them through, well, here's what you're going to do is by working with us, you're going to go through this X step process. And everybody that follows this process gets these results. And so we want to bring you through that process, coach you up on how to do that. And this is our promise. This is where we're going to get you. And that's one of the hardest things to do, is to make promises and to say what's possible.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, I think many people are pessimists when it comes to their business, where we're like, well, you could get that, but a lot of people don't. And it's like, yes, that's true. Not everybody gets the results that you promise, but could you point to their behavior and their actions and say, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do this and you didn't do this, even though I advised you to do all those things. If
Right.
you did your part, you did the correct advising, you gave all the coaching or consulting or whatever it was that you could, and they still didn't do the things, that's no longer on you that they didn't get the result.
Right.
That is on them. So if they do the step-by-step process, they will get the result. So if you're able to distill your process down, that is a prime way to build some core intellectual property. You can name that process whatever you want, call it the Andrew method or whatever. And at the end of the day, the name of it doesn't really matter because it doesn't mean anything to people. What means something then is stories. Okay. So
Yep.
one, you've got a transformation. Two, you've got some sort of step-by-step process. And three, you've got a way of talking about that process. You've got a way of sharing stories and insights about what makes that process special. And in the health industry, you see see it all the time. There's diet fads that just explode like crazy because it's got a name, it's got some sort of transformation that it promises, right? You're going to lower your blood pressure, you're going to feel this way, it's going to be amazing if you do this diet. And then they have some sort of central IP. You just follow this step-by-step plan and you're going to get it, and it's amazing. And then they tell stories, right? They'll have client testimonials, they'll have these research, they'll have those other stuff they're talking about. And while it seems like there's all this big business type stuff, small business owners and really anybody can apply these same exact concepts to stand out in the marketplace.
I love it. I'm like, I like the connection point of stories of what connects all of it. And it's so true because, I mean, if I sat here and said, I'm going to give you a lecture for 3 hours on imperialism and climate change and driving out natives, and everyone's going to fall asleep. But the highest grossing movie of all time is Avatar, and that's exactly what it's about. And it's because the stories are really good, and obviously the animation's beautiful, and phenomenal movie. But yes, stories are the reason people pay attention, and it's proven time and time and again. Something you talk about, or something I read on your website about courses, was the storytelling structure method. Excuse me. How does that help streamline the process of creating a course that could be a part of this IP ecosystem?
Sure. So storytelling structure, we've got a few core elements to it, and it's tough without a visual medium, but I'll kind
Yeah.
of talk people through it, and I'll do my best to anchor it as we go. So there's 5 main steps. So there is grabbing people's attention. That's step 1. And as part of that storytelling structure, you capture that attention, and we do this on a macro scale, like over the course of a book or over the course of an entire course. But you also do this on a micro scale. You want to do that in that course video. You want to do that in that individual chapter. So you want to draw people in with something attention grabbing. And you see this on social media all the time, right? What's the hook, right?
Yep.
How
Yep.
are you going to get people to pay attention? Okay. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Sometimes the best hook is it's an interesting story that you lead with. Sometimes the best hook could be a statistic. So it can be something controversial that you're saying. Whatever it is, right? You want to hook them. You want to draw them in. That's the attention piece.
Yep.
But then you follow that up with tension. So I've got your attention now, right? And to liken it to a meme, right? You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention. Is we want to get that tension figured out to really draw them in. So tension, conflict, what's at stake here? And you'll notice some of the best movies, the world is at stake, the universe is at stake, right? Oh, everything's gonna go if something bad happens. Going back to Avatar, right? That literally the world was at stake, and so that's what they have to fight back against. Whereas if the stakes are significantly lower, sometimes it's a lot harder to get people to care or to get people to pay attention. And so that's where that tension element comes in. So you've got their attention. Now you want to create some sort of tension with them, right? Create some sort of internal turmoil, get them to feel something. Now I want to connect with them. I want to find a way for them to understand me, to see me as the expert. Hey, I've been there. Hey, I understand this. Hey, I've worked with people that have done that. Whatever it is, you're bringing them in and connecting with them on an individual level. They feel now seen. Okay.
Yep.
So I've drawn them in, okay, with the attention. Now I've created some inner conflict or some emotions with tension. I've made them feel seen and see me more as the expert with that connection. And now I'm going to deliver a solution. And so now I'm going to say, hey, so now we've kind of I got you all riled up. Now you trust me a little bit.
Yep.
And now here's what we're going to do. Okay. We're going to do blank. And you can walk through a basic process. And for those that are book readers or for those that are engaging in courses, you can see this relatively quickly in a book where it's like, oh, cool. They've got this 5-step process, or I do these 3 things, or, they mean like the core content of the course is like, okay, you're going to download this program and you're going to do this thing, right? It's the action that happens within there. Okay. That's kind of the solution aspect.
Yeah.
And then we follow that up with a final action, which is like, what are you now going to do with this? Okay. I gave you the steps, and now how do you apply it? How do you now bring this into reality? So that's quickly our storytelling structure. And to kind of circle that back to our general concept we've been talking about, that's some of our intellectual property. Now, what makes this special is we've used this in a lot of different books, and we've used it a lot of different ways. We've had a number of New York Times best-selling authors, USA Today bestsellers, using this exact process. And so I could go in, I could tell a couple stories about that if I wanted to make that point a little bit more, make you trust the process a little bit more. But that's kind of the gist of how you now take intellectual property and you show value with it, and you get people to kind of trust that. And now, okay, now they've got an elevated sense of what this person does.
It's funny. You and I met when I was in the middle of writing my book that's now out, and we had not talked about this previously. But in my book, I'm like, it's gonna be hard to see on the thing, but I have like my middle section is those action steps. Like, here's what you need to do, and then each chapter ends with a very quick, like, just your next steps checklist, 1, 2, 3, like simplified points. So I can tell you a feedback I've gotten from people reading my book is that works. Like, building the empathy, building the authority, telling a really good story, telling them what they need to do as a result of that, and then telling them again, like, hey, here's exactly what to do. It works. It's a great way to connect with your audience and a great way to use story in order to build something else and get people to take action, which I think is really important. Um, Now, for business owners who are listening who want to get started in turning their knowledge into an IP ecosystem, doing more with it, maybe it's to write the book, to build the course, but to, hey, I'm an expert, I want to do more. Where should they begin? What's the first step they can take?
Man, so a lot of directions you can go if you're ready to start working on something like this. What I'll do actually is Jacob, I'll send you a link to our to the actual storytelling structure. We call it our book starter focus tool. So I would check that out. Just go and start playing around with that. It'll kind of walk you through exactly what to
Yeah.
do to start solidifying some of your intellectual property. And it's kind of funny whenever I am working on something new, I think in terms of a book. And I feel like what a book does for you is it concentrates all your ideas into one spot. And
Yep.
whether or not you write that book doesn't matter sometimes. Sometimes it just matters that you concentrated all your
Right.
ideas.
Right.
And so what you might want to do is think, okay, if I were to write the book on this, what would be in that book? What would I talk about? What would be the core ideas? What would be the core stories I would share? What are the key frameworks? What's the lessons they're going to learn? All that, right? If you can start putting that into a centralized place, that is going to put you way far ahead because you can use that anywhere. You can use that in your social media or anywhere else in your marketing. You can use that as a part of your sales system. Now you know some core stories that you want to be sharing. You can use that as a part of your client process, onboarding process, or anywhere else in that process where you have certain frameworks that you want to give to them, or certain roadblocks you want to mention. Hey, this is coming, by the way. And I know that because I've been through this a bunch of times, right? And so now they trust you, and hey, the roadblock came up, and oh man, they trust you even more because you know it was coming, right? And so you know the patterns, you know the systems, and you've got it all centralized. So starting with some basic structure, great way to go. Book starter focus tool is going to be a huge help with that.
I love it. I'd love for you to share it, and we can end with this, but I'd love for you to share a success story of people that you've worked with personally that have done this successfully, like that went from I think I know, I think I'm an expert, I have this knowledge, whatever, and then turned it into a successful product or a successful ecosystem.
Yeah. So one of my favorites is a guy named Scott Grates. So I'm working with Scott Grates right now on his second project. And it's funny. So he's gotten so busy from his first project that we did with him that it's like I'm trying to pull teeth now to get him to
Yep.
move ahead on his second project, which is a great problem to have because he did a launch for technically his second or third book, but his first book with us. And he was called Referrals Done Right. And I'll give you a little background on Scott. So Scott is a very average guy, like average height, like average everything. You look at him on the outside and you're like, okay, nothing remarkable there. But he's built a really great, thriving local business. Now he's an insurance agent, and he owns multiple agencies, and started as just an agent and just kind of grew and grew and grew and got better and better and better. And he is phenomenal at creating referral networks, at creating
Okay.
this kind of community of people that come together. And so his businesses do extremely well because they are embedded in their communities. And insurance is a very difficult industry because there's a ton of other very similar products. But what he's done well is he's been able to showcase what makes them different. And really, a lot of that comes down to the personal touch in the way that they handle things. Now, he's built these insurance agencies. He's done really well.
Yeah.
And for him, he's like, man, okay, I'm ready for my next thing. I'm ready to do a little bit more than just insurance. And so what he wanted to do was, I want to now teach other business people, maybe other agency owners or other people in business similar to this, how to create businesses like mine so that you have these steady referral networks, so that you are embedded in your communities, wherever those communities are, whether they're virtual or in person. And so he wrote the book, Referrals Done Right.
There you go.
and ended up being a USA Today bestseller. Guess what? Followed the framework, right? The storytelling structure, all that stuff, right? So we did all that with him. Published the book, did phenomenal. Now he's a great marketer. He's got a good list already. He's already, far ahead compared to some people. So he had a leg up in that sense. But in another sense, he's kind of heading into new territory, right? He was an insurance guy, and now he's kind of stepping out as a business guy, a business leader,
Right.
coaching other business leaders. And so this is a new venture. So had a great publish, great launch, and now he's absolutely swamped with requests for speaking, for training, for all this other stuff, for him to now leverage this expertise to help other people. He was telling me about one that was going to be a 3-day, 2 hours per day event workshop that he was contacted about. And he said it was, one of many, poured in. And it was like, okay, $25,000 they were going to pay him for those 6 hours of workshop training.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, obviously, he's going to put some time in ahead of that, get everything ready to go and all that, right? But he's now able to scale his message and earn significantly more in a shorter period of time because he's able to showcase that value. And especially in a business like his, where now he can show other people how to earn more money. Right. People will pay a significant amount of money to do that. So Scott is a great story because he'll be the first to tell you he's just an average guy, and he's done it. And he's in a cutthroat industry to start off with, and he's doing great with it.
That's incredible. Andrew, where can people find out more about you, or if they're interested in working with you further, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, go to mystorybuilders.com. And check out our website. See some of the people that we work with. We work with a bunch of big names: Zig Ziglar, Lewis Howes, Kevin Harrington, like a bunch of other people you know. And we've also worked with people you don't know. So don't feel like we're like, out of your league.
Yeah.
So check us out on there. Look at some of the stuff we have. And if you're like, cool, let's actually talk, or I want to just see what it's like to work with you guys. We have a very low pressure discussion with people. We're not like some sort of sales funnel type place. So if you want to actually talk to somebody, see if we can help you, or if we can refer you somewhere else to get help, go to mystorybuilders.com/story. So mystorybuilders.com/story. And that's a great way to connect with someone from our team. Just see if we can help you at all.
I love it. And I'll link that in the episode description below here as well. Andrew, thank you so much for being on the Waves Business Coaching Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jacob.
Take care.